American West, as most of the world knows it, never truly existed. It was built in pieces, on sound stages, in sunburned deserts, through sweeping camera movements and men who carried themselves like monuments. And among all of them, one figure rose higher than the rest: John Wayne. For nearly half a century, his image defined what a hero looked like on screen. Tall, unflinching, certain. He didn't just play cowboys and soldiers. He embodied a version of America that believed in strength without doubt and justice without hesitation. But legends are rarely born fully formed. Before he became the face of the Western, John Wayne was a failed football player. Before he symbolized patriotism, he was a studio laborer carrying props across dusty backlots. Before audiences believed him as a man who never backed down, he spent nearly a decade being ignored by Hollywood entirely. His rise wasn't fast. It wasn't glamorous. And it wasn't guaranteed. John Wayne's career survived a major box office failure that would have ended most actors. It was rebuilt through dozens of low-budget films that taught him discipline, screen presence, and control. And when success finally came, it came with a price. Because Wayne didn't just become a movie star. He became a symbol. And symbols don't age quietly. As America changed, John Wayne didn't. His beliefs, his politics, and his on-screen persona became points of admiration for some, and sources of controversy for others. To understand John Wayne is to understand how cinema shapes national identity, and how it can trap an actor inside an image larger than the person beneath it. This is not a story about a perfect man, and it's not a story about a villain. It's a story of how Marion Morrison became John Wayne, and how one actor helped define mythology of an entire country, whether it wanted that myth or not. This is Cinema Uncovered, and this is the legacy of John Wayne. Before John Wayne became a symbol, he was simply Marion Robert Morrison, a quiet, athletic kid growing up far from the myth of the American West he would one day help define. He was born in 1907 in Winterset, Iowa, but his family soon moved west, settling in Southern California. It was there, in the wide spaces between farmland and the growing city of Los Angeles, that Morrison developed a physical presence audiences would later associate with strength and confidence. At school, Marion stood out, not for acting but for sports. He was tall, disciplined, and dependable, earning a football scholarship to the University of Southern California. At the time, football wasn't just a game, it was his future. Hollywood was nowhere in the plan. That future ended abruptly. A shoulder injury, sustained during a body surfing accident, permanently damaged his throwing arm. The scholarship was lost. The dream disappeared. And for the first time, Marion Morrison was forced to start over. Needing work, he found a job at Fox Film Corporation, not in front of the camera, but behind it. He hauled equipment, carried furniture, and watched actors rehearse from the edges of the set. It wasn't glamorous, but it was education. He learned how scenes were blocked, how directors shape performances, how the camera rewarded stillness more than movement. During this time, he crossed paths with director John Ford, a relationship that would later define his career. Ford didn't see a star yet, but he saw reliability, work ethic, and potential. When Marion Morrison began appearing in small roles, the studio gave him a new name, John Wayne. It was simple, strong, memorable, but the name alone didn't make the man. Hollywood had given him an identity. Now he had to prove he deserved it. By the end of the 1920s, Hollywood was changing fast. Sound had arrived. Studios were taking risks. And Fox Film Corporation believed it had found its next leading man in John Wayne, a tall, broad-shouldered newcomer who looked natural on horseback and carried himself with quiet confidence. In 1930, Wayne was cast as a lead in The Big Trail. The film was ambitious on a scale rarely attempted at the time. Shot across multiple states, using real locations and an experimental widescreen process called Fox Grandeur, it was designed to redefine the Western and launch John Wayne into stardom. Instead, it collapsed. Most theaters weren't equipped to project the widescreen format. Audiences were confused by the unfamiliar presentation. And when the film failed at the box office, the fallout was immediate. John Wayne was blamed. Overnight, the studio lost confidence in him as a leading man. Major roles disappeared. Contracts dried up. The future that had seemed inevitable was suddenly gone. For many actors, this would have been the end. But Wayne didn't leave Hollywood. He went underground. Throughout the 1930s, John Wayne appeared in dozens of low-budget B-westerns, produced quickly and cheaply for neighborhood theaters. These films rarely received critical attention, and few survive in public memory today. But they served a purpose. Wayne learned efficiency. He learned how to deliver dialogue without waste. He learned how to hold the frame without overacting. Most importantly, he learned how to project authority. While other actors chased prestige, Wayne refined consistency. Film after film, he developed a screen persona that would later define him. Calm under pressure, physically grounded, morally direct. And while Hollywood had stopped watching, one director hadn't. John Ford remembered him. Nearly a decade after The Big Trail failed, Ford needed an actor for a risky project, an outlaw with quiet intensity, someone believable but unpolished. He didn't need a star. He needed John Wayne. In 1939, Hollywood didn't see John Wayne as a risk worth taking, but John Ford did. Ford was preparing a Western called Stagecoach, a project many studios considered outdated. Westerns, they believed, were cheap entertainment, not serious cinema. Casting an unproven actor in the lead only made the gamble worse. Ford ignored them. When John Wayne appears on screen for the first time in Stagecoach, the moment is simple and unforgettable. The camera tracks forward. Wayne's character, the Ringo Kid, spins a rifle in his hand and looks directly into the lens. It wasn't just an entrance. It was a decoration. Audiences immediately sensed something different. Wayne didn't rush his performance. He let silence do the work. His stillness gave him weight, an instinct honed during years of low-budget films where efficiency mattered more than flourish. Stagecoach was a critical and commercial success. It elevated the Western into something more complex and dramatic, and it transformed John Wayne from forgotten actor into a legitimate star almost overnight. But the real transformation wasn't just in popularity, it was in definition. Wayne's Ringo Kid wasn't a loud hero. He was restrained, moral without being naive, capable of violence, but not driven by it. This balance became the foundation of the John Wayne persona. From that point on, Wayne and Ford formed one of cinema's most influential partnerships. Together, they reshaped the Western through films like Fort Apache, She Wore Yellow Ribbon, and Rio Grande. Each role refined Wayne's image, the leader who carried responsibility, the man shaped by duty rather than emotion, the hero whose strength came from certainty, not bravado. Yet even as Wayne became synonymous with American heroism, Ford occasionally pushed him into darker territory. That challenge would lead to one of the most complex performances of his career, one that questioned the very image Wayne had helped build. And it was still ahead. By the mid-1950s, John Wayne was no longer just a movie star. He was the movie star. Audiences trusted him instinctively. When Wayne appeared on screen, they knew where he stood, what was right, what was wrong, and how order would ultimately be restored. That certainty was his power. And that was exactly what made The Searchers, 1956, so unsettling. Directed by John Ford, the film cast Wayne as Ethan Edwards, a Civil War veteran driven by obsession, hatred, and moral rigidity. Ethan isn't searching to rescue his niece out of pure love. He's searching because he can't let go of vengeance. For the first time, Wayne played a man whose values were deeply compromised. Ethan Edwards is openly racist. He is violent even when unnecessary. He operates outside the moral framework audiences expected from a John Wayne hero, and the film never fully redeems him. Wayne understood the risk. He knew that playing Ethan meant confronting the darker implications of the persona he had helped build, but he trusted Ford, and he recognized the truth in the story. The Searchers didn't just question frontier justice. It questioned John Wayne himself. At the time, many audiences were uncomfortable with the film. Some critics didn't know what to make of it. But decades later, it is widely regarded as one of the greatest American films ever made, and Wayne's performance is considered one of his most layered. Yet while his films began exploring complexity, Wayne's real-world image moved in the opposite direction. As Hollywood shifted during the 1960s, embracing counterculture, ambiguity, and skepticism, Wayne became increasingly outspoken. He defended traditional American values, supported U.S. military involvement overseas, and rejected the direction modern cinema was taking. He wasn't adapting to the times. He was standing his ground. This refusal to change cemented his legacy, but it also turned him into a lightning rod for criticism. To supporters, Wayne represented stability and strength. To detractors, he symbolized an unwillingness to confront a changing world. By the end of the decade, John Wayne wasn't just part of American cinema. He was part of the national argument. By the late 1960s, John Wayne was carrying more than a career. He was carrying a legacy. Hollywood had changed dramatically. Antiheroes replaced traditional icons. Westerns faded from dominance. Younger audiences questioned the moral certainty that Wayne had built his image upon. Yet Wayne remained unmistakable. In 1969, he starred in True Grit, playing U.S. Marshal Rooster Cogburn, a character that leaned directly into his public persona. Cogburn was aging, stubborn, and unapologetically old-fashioned. The performance was larger than life, but intentionally so. That year, John Wayne won his only Academy Award for Best Actor. The irony wasn't lost on him. After decades of defining American cinema, the Oscar arrived for a role that knowingly reflected the legend rather than reinvented it. Wayne accepted the award with humility, aware that it represented a lifetime more than a single performance. Behind the scenes, his health was deteriorating. Wayne had already survived a major cancer surgery in the 1960s, losing a lung and several ribs. Years of heavy smoking and exposure to hazardous filming locations had taken their toll. Still, he continued to work, refusing to step away quietly. His final film, The Shootist, 1976, was a farewell in everything but name. Wayne played J.B. Brooks, an aging gunfighter dying of cancer. The parallels were deliberate. The film didn't glorify violence or victory. It acknowledged mortality, consequence, and the cost of legend. It was John Wayne saying goodbye on his own terms. When he died in 1979 at the age of 72, tributes poured in, but so did debates. His films, his politics, and his influence were re-examined through a modern lens. And that debate has never stopped. John Wayne left behind more than 170 films. He left behind a cinematic identity so powerful it still shapes how heroism is portrayed today, whether filmmakers embrace it or push against it. He wasn't flawless. He wasn't timeless. But he was undeniable. Interesting trivias. John Wayne never served in World War II, despite frequently portraying soldiers on screen. He remained in Hollywood making films while many contemporaries enlisted, a decision that later followed him throughout his career. His famous slow, rolling walk wasn't accidental. Wayne studied real cowboys and sailors, deliberately adjusting his posture and stride to project weight, authority, and calm control on camera. Wayne worked with director John Ford more than any other actor, appearing in 14 films together, one of the most influential actor-director partnerships in cinema history. He turned down the role of Dirty Harry in the early 1970s, believing the character's vigilantism conflicted with his personal sense of justice. Despite his tough on-screen persona, Wayne was known among crews as professional and disciplined, rarely late, and highly respectful of the filmmaking process. Wayne often disliked watching his own films, believing his job was finished once production ended. His Oscar for True Grit was the only Academy Award he won for acting, despite decades as one of Hollywood's biggest stars. The nickname The Duke came from his childhood, long before fame, after his dog of the same name followed him everywhere. His final film, The Shootist, included multiple actors from his past westerns, an intentional farewell to the genre and era he helped define. John Wayne's influence extends beyond westerns. Modern filmmakers continue to reference, critique, or subvert his image when exploring American masculinity and heroism. John Wayne was never just an actor. He was construction, built from camera angles, long silences, and a certainty that felt unshakable. Film by film, he became something larger than the stories he appeared in, a symbol of strength, of resolve, of an America that believed clarity was a virtue. But symbols don't belong to one generation. As time passed, the world that shaped John Wayne changed, and so did the way audiences looked at him. His films are now studied as much for what they reveal as for what they represent. not because they are perfect, but because they are honest reflections of the era that produced them. John Wayne didn't adapt to history. History adapted around him. And whether he is admired, challenged, or re-examined, his presence still lingers in cinema today. In every quiet hero, every weathered face framed against an open horizon, every story that wrestles with the cost of certainty. To understand John Wayne is not to agree with him. It is to understand the power of film to create myths and the responsibility that comes with believing in them. This has been Cinema Uncovered, because legends aren't meant to be worshipped. They're meant to be understood.